Hello and welcome to the show, Dave Mattacks.
Hello, Jake.
It's great to speak to you. You are heading out on tour with a couple of different bands, with Fairport Convention, who are favourites on the show, and with Feast of Fiddles. Fairport kicking off their tour on March 17th, and Feast of Fiddles on tour from now until March 7th. How are you feeling we're speaking ahead of those tours, how are you feeling ahead of your return to the UK?
I'm bracing myself. Normally, the Feast of Fiddles tour, by the way, will be the 31st year that we've done a UK tour. And in the past, um, uh, well, certainly, I would say I've been playing with the Feast of Fiddles for 31 years, and then, as some people know, kind of on and off with Fairport at Cropredy. And then, due to the very unfortunate passing of Gerry, the band invited me back to do the tours, the ones that go around the UK in the spring. And normally, over the last few years, there's been a gap between Feast of Fiddles and Fairport, or the other way round, and I get to come back home. And to cut a long story short, the way it's worked out this year, there's only 5 days, I think, at the most, between the last Feast of Fiddles and Fairport rehearsals. So the thought of finishing the last, I couldn't, and because the last feast of, this is maybe a bit too much information for you, but the last Feast of Fiddles date is way up north. So by the time I got back south, I wouldn't get on a plane till the following day. I probably would get 48 hours at home, and then I'd have to turn around and come back. So for the first time in a very, very long time, I'm going to be away from home for 2 months. I'm pleased to say that my wife's going to come over and join me in the middle of that 2 month tenure between the two bands, and I'll get a few days off to spend some time with her, and then she'll make a few of the dates, the first few dates on the Fairport tour. But basically, I'm prepping myself for being away from home for 2 months, which it's been a long time since I did anything like that. I mean, I think the last time I was away for that length of time or longer was probably Chris Rea, Jethro Tull era, kind of 80s, 90s. So I'm not really used to it, but I know how to do it. I'm just not used to it.
For a bit of context for the listeners, you are calling from New England in American Boston. What made you want to move out there? And you've been living there for more than 25 years now, haven't you?
Yes, we moved out here in 2000. Um, really, I the short answer is I was working over here more, and it got to the point where, relatively speaking, I couldn't get arrested in England. Uh, Something that freelance musicians, uh, my peers, we talk about is that if you build up some kind of resume with some, shall we say, some substance to it, some credit to it, it prevents some people from even calling you because they think you're either not going to be too interested, or you want, $10,000 a day or so. So it got to the point in England that I just wasn't working, and I was working over here a lot more. And one of the things that I had, that was nice, and I had no issue with it at all, Jake, was I almost had to start again in some quarters. Some people would say, "Oh, you've played with blah blah blah," and others, "What's your name again?" And I would say, "Blah blah blah." Would you be interested in doing this kind of gig up the road for, with playing with some friends? Yeah, sure. So I was kind of between two schools of perception, if you will. And I had no issue whatsoever with, just doing local gigs and everything, because that's how you get your name around. And it went from there. And now 25 years later, I'm really happy here, apart from the current political situation, but let's not go down that path. And I've made a lot of great musical friends, and a lot of non-musical friends too. So, but it was really because of working here more and very little going for me in England.
You mentioned some people knew who you played with, and I think you probably have the biggest CV of every single guest that's ever done this show. And I mean, some that
Jerry,
might.
Jerry, forgive the interruption. Jerry Douglas might might give me a good run for his money, for your
Do you
money.
know
But
what? Actually, yeah, as I said that, yeah, fair enough.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and just before the interview, we mentioned Joan Armatrading, and Joan did the show very, very early on in its incarnation, and you did. You were the drummer on her debut album back in 1976.
Without getting too pedantic, that was her second. It was her
Just
first
the
very big album.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, yeah, the Love and Affection album. Yeah, yeah, and utterly enjoyable. And I was absolutely delighted when she asked me to go on the road. We did a couple of English tours, a couple of American tours, and they were so enjoyable. She's still, and then she invited me back. Oh God, I don't know, 10, 15 years later, and I played on another album, The Shouting Stage, with Joan. Always a pleasure to work with her. My wife Karen and myself went to see her when she came through Boston a couple of years ago, and she was just by herself, and it was wonderful. I've got so much time for Joan.
And another name, which I didn't, I've only seen the name sort of attached to yours, the Incredible String Band. I don't. How did you end up working with the Incredible String Band?
That was really through Joe Boyd and Witch Season. Joe Boyd, at the time, back in the deep mists of time in 1900, and Frozen to Death, was the manager for Fairport and also the Incredible String Band, and asked me to play on one track. And out of the things that I've done back in the day, that's the one that I'm most embarrassed about, because the light bulb hadn't really gone off for me in terms of really understanding songs and playing musically appropriately. And that, to me, that one track that I did for the ISB, I I find it embarrassing, if I'm really honest. Not for them, it's just the drumming is just, it makes me cringe. The other stuff I can listen to, the Nick Drake stuff and the early Sandy stuff and the John Martin stuff from that period, I've stopped beating myself up about it, and I just listen to it and I go, well, I was very young and very green and I was doing my best. But that, funny you should mention it, Jake, that one ISB track, I have to go and hide behind the couch when I don't play it very often. But it's a great piece of music, but the drumming is not good. Thanks for bringing it up.
I'm sorry, yeah, that of all the
It's
bands I
okay.
chose from the list, I should not have chosen the Incredible String Band, it seems.
It's okay. I mean, they were so good. It took me a few years before I really kind of got what they were about. But so I'm just hearing a very, very green drummer banging away in the background on that track.
We are going to take a quick break here on Nerve Radio. But I'm going to say, Dave, what song, and I maybe should have prepped you for this one in advance, what song from your career should we play in the break?
Oh, crikey. Anything off of Mock Tudor by Richard Thompson, or anything off None Such by XTC. Those two are kind of favorites, I
Yeah.
suppose.
Let's go for a bit of Richard Thompson then on Nerve Radio. You mentioned in the first half of the interview there rehearsals with Fairport, and I was wondering actually where you've been so on off and on with them throughout the years. Is it like riding a bike? Are you able to just go back in and play like stuff like Walk a While? Do you just know it now, or is there still kind of practice needed?
Definitely, we definitely rehearse. What happens is that the set list with a few options is decided up front, and all the members of the ensemble do their homework. So we all come prepared, knowing what we're supposed to sing and play and blah blah blah. Um, in terms of how it feels, being back with the guys, I can only use a rather tired analogy of it's like putting on a pair of extremely comfortable slippers. Um, I really, I really enjoy playing with the guys very much. It's very comfortable. But in terms of the actual notes themselves, yes, what, as you know, to reiterate, everyone does their homework So everyone rolls up knowing what songs we're going to do. But there's always options too. If we get, maybe we might get kind of, I don't know, 5 or 6 gigs into the tour and say, oh, this particular song isn't working. Let's try something else, and that falls under the fingers relatively easy.
And you mentioned earlier that you've come back after the death of the late Gerry Conway. And is it hard playing on the songs that he was the drummer for, stuff like Shuffle and Go, the most recent stuff?
It's a little difficult emotionally because me and the rest of the chaps absolutely loved Gerry. I mean, Gerry was one of my heroes very early on. I remember hearing him because it was him, Gerry, myself, and Timmy Donald, and one or two other drummers that just seemed to be in permanent rotation at Sound Techniques and playing with all those singer-songwriters back in the day. And then Gerry was obviously fantastic and went on to join Cat Stevens and Jethro Tull and God knows who else. So it's a little difficult emotionally, but one of the positive aspects is, for me, is the challenge of interpreting Gerry's parts and his approach to the songs that are, inverted commas, new to me. In other words, all the material that the guys have been doing over the last 25 years, which I haven't had anything to do with. I mean, I'd see and hear them when I would guest at Cropredy and we do the double drummer thing, but with myself and Gerry. But all that material is really new to me. So it's a pleasure to play it and try and I'm trying to put I'm trying to fit in, put my stamp on it, but respect Gerry's parts at the same time. And another very positive aspect is nobody in the band would turn around to me and say, "Oh, the fill that Gerry played there is, you've got to do that one." I can recognize the essential parts of Gerry's approach and what he played, and I either play them exactly as is or I play round them. But the guys are kind enough to just say, "Here's the material, do your thing." And we've all grown up enough to know not to say, to what I call nailing it down, where you work for somebody or alongside somebody and they're telling you every single note to play. Because if in those kind of scenarios, unless you're playing film music, in those kind of scenarios, if somebody's telling you every single note to play, and it's been a long time since that happened to me, my attitude is you probably got the wrong person. Because if here's how I'm going to approach something, hopefully it's going to fit. But if you've got an incredibly fixed idea in your head about how a certain song should go, either, the phrase I use, Jake, is either program it or go and get a Berkeley student, because you don't want me, you just want something to function. But if you'd like me to contribute towards the song, then I'll absolutely do my best. So that's a long-winded answer, but hopefully that explains how we all approach songs. Yeah.
Does taking over from Gerry bring back any comparisons to taking over from the late Martin Lamble, like back in 1969?
I was aware of I was very aware when Gerry passed and the guys asked me to do the tour on Cropredy. I was very aware of the parallels. It's slightly easier because we're all older and a little bit more mature and wiser. Let's put it that way. But I was aware of that parallel. That was a little strange, yeah. But when I came into the band in '69 after Martin, I was utterly a deer in the headlights musically. I'd never heard that kind of music like that. I mean, folk music for me, when I joined Fairport in '69, was Finger in the Ear, Woolly Sweaters, and Peter, Paul, and Mary. I had no idea at all. And it was a while before the light bulb went on, when started to shine, and I started to appreciate what the band was doing on an aesthetic level. And also, as it began to dawn on me, Jake, it had a profound effect on how I play, a profound effect, because I was up until that point, I was all technique, 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 and I wasn't really listening, really listening to what other people, other musicians were doing. And Fairport kind of pretty much taught me how to listen to music and how to listen to other musicians and stop being so musically selfish.
You're on tour with Feast of Fiddles from now until March 7th. How does
Mm-hmm.
that differ from, I mean, without kind of being saying the obvious, there's a lot of fiddles, aren't there, going on with that compared to vocalists? Yeah.
Yeah, just the 5-piece rhythm section and 6 electric violin players. Yeah, the bane of my life. No, I'm only kidding, guys. No, no, it's a really great band. It really is. Yeah,
And then you'll be at Cropredy Festival. It's great that Cropredy's back. It's smaller than usual, last year being the tester event, but it's back. Yeah.
where the band is really pleased with the way that turned out, and I, you probably know, and for those who don't, the band, the Fairport band, decided to scale it back. It's still wonderful and it's still a pretty big production. I mean, it still costs, I don't know, a million plus, whatever it is to put it on. But by scaling it back a little bit, it what we've done is remove the, oh dear, are we going to end up bankrupt if insufficient amount of people turn up? Because that's what we were on the edge of. It's well known that the whole festival circuit in many genres, not just in the genre that Fairport is in. Although I'm always, when people say, "Oh, it's a folk festival," I always say, "Yeah, like with Alice Cooper and Chic," and I'm always interested to and bemused to point that out. But the whole festival circuit is not what it was, and many festivals have got under. So the whole thing with Cropredy was let's scale it back so it can continue, and then if things continue to go well, then we can raise the bar again. But the guys felt that they had to pull things back, otherwise they were going to go under, and nobody wanted that. So rather a slightly smaller festival than no festival is the summation of that story.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on the Folk and Country Music Show today, Dave Mattacks.
You're welcome, Jake. You're welcome.